My name is Emily. I'm 34 years old, and today I want to tell you something I've never said out loud before. It all started with a single piece of paper that changed my life forever. A lottery ticket I bought on a random Tuesday, more out of boredom than hope. I wasn't the type of person who really believed in luck. I was working long shifts, struggling to pay bills, living in a small apartment, and trying to stretch every dollar until it broke. For me, the lottery was nothing more than a harmless dream, a quick what-if fantasy while waiting in line at the grocery store. But that evening, when the winning numbers appeared on the screen, my world cracked open in silence. I had just won millions. My heart raced, my hands shook, but there was no one there to scream with me, no one to hug, no one to share the disbelief. Because in that instant, a decision as heavy as gold pressed down on me. I wasn't going to tell anyone, not my parents, not my closest friends, not even the person I trusted most. Why? Because I knew how fragile relationships could become when money entered the picture. I'd seen it before, families torn apart, friendships dissolved, love poisoned by envy. So I kept it to myself, like guarding a secret that could both save and destroy me. But life doesn't pause when you're holding a secret like this. Bills still came, emergencies still happened, and I still found myself asking family for help. The difference was they had no idea I was already rich. And that silence, it created stories I never could have predicted. Stories I'm about to share with you now. When I first checked my bank account after the winnings cleared, the numbers didn't even look real. It felt like I had hacked into someone else's fortune. Millions were sitting there untouched, waiting for me to decide who I would become. Yet instead of celebrating, I felt a strange fear. It was as though every dollar was a spotlight exposing me, ready to reveal my secret at any moment. I thought about telling my family. After all, they'd been by my side through every hardship, every unpaid bill, every embarrassing moment of borrowing money just to get through the month. But a voice inside me whispered, if you tell them, everything will change. And I wasn't ready to lose the people I loved to jealousy, expectation, or greed. So I swallowed the truth and acted like nothing had changed. But pretending came at a cost. When my car broke down, I called my brother for help, even though I could have easily bought a brand new one in cash. When rent felt overwhelming, I cried to my mom, knowing full well I could pay for a year up front without blinking. Each time, guilt twisted inside me, but I told myself I was protecting them from something bigger, something uglier, and that's why I'm sharing this story here, because secrets have weight and mine nearly crushed me. If you've ever wondered what winning the lottery really feels like, not the fantasy, but the raw, complicated truth, you're about to find out. So stay with me until the very end. What happened after I chose silence will shock you, maybe even make you question what you'd do in my place. And before we dive in, hit that subscribe button, because trust me, this is only the beginning. That night felt completely ordinary. I had just come back from work, still smelling faintly of coffee from the cafe where I spent most of my days. I tossed my keys on the table and turned on the TV, more for background noise than entertainment. When the lottery numbers were announced, I picked up my ticket without much expectation, almost laughing at myself for wasting $2 on such an impossible dream. But as the numbers appeared one by one, something unreal happened. They matched exactly with the ones on my ticket. At first, I thought I was misreading. Then I thought it must be some kind of mistake or prank. But when I realized every single number was right, the floor dropped out from under me. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might faint. I sat on the couch with trembling hands, whispering to myself over and over, "This can't be real. This can't be real." I rushed to my computer, double-checked on the official website, then on other sites, and even called the lottery hotline. Every confirmation told me the same thing. I was the newest millionaire in the country. It was like lightning had struck directly into my life, burning everything I knew and leaving behind something that looked like a dream. But alongside the euphoria, fear crept in. I didn't tell a single soul that night. I didn't even text my best friend, something that would have been second nature in any other incredible situation. Instead, I hid the ticket inside a shoebox in my closet, locked with a small padlock like it was some forbidden treasure. And then I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, wondering what would come next. I thought about all the things I could buy, all the places I could travel, but one thought kept echoing louder than the rest. What would people do to me once they found out? The following days, I kept going to work as if nothing had changed. I served coffee, wiped tables, smiled at customers who complained about the smallest things, all while a storm raged inside me. Nobody there had any idea that I could have bought the entire cafe, maybe even the whole block. That secret began to split me in two. The Emily everyone knew, tired and broke, always a step behind on bills, and the Emily who was now a millionaire, forced to pretend she was still the same. That duality was both thrilling and suffocating. The first time I actually touched the money felt surreal. After handling all the legal confirmations with lawyers and state officials, the winnings finally hit my account. When I opened my banking app and saw those impossible numbers glowing on the screen, my mind froze. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just stared at it, like I was was facing a wild animal I didn't know how to tame. I felt an overwhelming responsibility, as if every dollar was a stick of dynamite I had to carry without letting it explode. That was the moment I realized not telling anyone wasn't just a safety decision. It was emotional protection. I had seen families torn apart by inheritances, friendships ruined over loans, marriages destroyed by greed. I didn't want my life to become another cautionary tale, but with every passing day, the decision grew harder to uphold, because hiding something this enormous required small, constant lies. The first of those lies came within a week. When my mom called me worried about an overdue electric bill, I could have easily paid every single one of her bills for years, but instead, I pretended I was just as broke as always. We talked like nothing had changed, but inside I was drowning in guilt. After we hung up, I cried alone in my room, feeling like I had betrayed her trust. Yet some part of me still believed it was the right thing, that it was better to suffer silently than risk losing her to a truth that might destroy us. Another moment came with my brother. My old car broke down on the side of the road, and though I could have walked into a dealership and bought a brand new one in cash, I called him for help instead. He showed up with his toolbox, sweating under the sun, grumbling about the engine, but never hesitating to be there for me. I wanted to say, "Don't worry, I can fix everything right now," but I didn't. I let him tinker, thanked him sincerely, and drove away, still pretending to be the Emily who could barely afford insurance. That silence weighed heavier than any debt. Nights became the hardest part. Lying in bed, I'd imagine what it would be like to finally tell the truth. I pictured my mom's face, my best friend's reaction, even my boss's expression. Some images were beautiful, full of hugs and laughter. Others were nightmares. Angry words, resentment, hands reaching out for things I didn't want to give. The uncertainty paralyzed me. One wrong word, and everything in my life could change forever, with no way back. Still, I started testing my power in secret. I made anonymous donations to animal shelters, paid off strangers' debts through online fundraisers without ever signing my name. Those acts gave me a strange sense of peace, like I was finally using my money for something good without risking my secret. But they also reminded me of how much I was holding back, how much of myself I was hiding. It felt like living with massive wings tucked under a heavy coat. As the months passed, the tension didn't fade. If anything, it grew. My family still believed I was scraping by paycheck to paycheck, and I allowed them to think so because I didn't know how to handle the truth. But every time I asked for advice on budgeting or accepted a small loan, something inside me cracked. It was like I was building a wall of lies between us, brick by brick, and I knew that sooner or later that wall would collapse. One rainy night, staring out my bedroom window, the question hit me harder than ever. How long could I keep this up? The money was still there, untouched for the most part, silently multiplying in the bank, while I became a prisoner of my own decision. The dilemma was no longer whether I should tell my family, but when, and what would happen to all of us the day the truth finally came out. The first cracks in my carefully built silence appeared faster than I expected. At family dinners, I caught myself zoning out, thinking about the money sitting untouched in my account, while everyone else complained about bills or gas prices. I nodded, pretended to share their worries, but inside it felt like I was playing a cruel game. My mother would sigh about how groceries were getting more expensive. My brother would groan about his mortgage, and I'd sit there silently, knowing I could fix it all with a single check. The guilt wasn't just heavy, it was suffocating. It wasn't only guilt that haunted me, it was fear. Fear that I'd slip up, that I'd accidentally say something that revealed too much. Once, while out with friends, I almost mentioned a charity I had secretly donated to, forgetting that I wasn't supposed to have the kind of money to do that. I caught myself mid-sentence, changed the subject, but the panic lingered. I realized that keeping this secret meant more than silence. It meant editing every word that came out of my mouth, rewriting every story before I spoke it. It was exhausting. There were moments when the money felt like a ghost following me everywhere. Walking down the street, I'd pass by luxury cars and know I could walk into the dealership right then and there. Browsing online, I'd see vacations I once only dreamed about and realize I could book them instantly without blinking. But instead of joy, these realizations brought a strange kind of sadness. What good was having wings if I was too afraid to fly? I told myself I was protecting my family, but deep down, I wondered if I was really protecting myself from their disappointment, their demands, or worse, their distance. Still, I couldn't resist testing the limits. One night, I drove out of town and bought myself something small but extravagant, a designer handbag that cost more than a month's rent at my old apartment. When I brought it home, I hid it in the back of my closet, afraid someone might see it. The irony wasn't lost on me. I could buy anything I wanted, yet I couldn't even carry the bag in public. It stayed hidden, like a secret within a secret. That purchase taught me something. The money wasn't freedom, not yet. It was a cage made of gold. My closest call came one afternoon when my brother asked if I'd thought about buying a new car. "That old thing is going to leave you stranded one day," he said, shaking his head. I laughed nervously, told him I couldn't afford it, and changed the the subject, but his eyes lingered on me a second too long, like he didn't quite believe me. That look terrified me. Had I said something before? Had he noticed something I didn't? For the first time, I realized my silence wasn't unbreakable. People could sense when something didn't add up. The weight of pretending grew heavier during the holidays. We gathered around the Christmas tree, exchanging small gifts, laughing at old jokes. My mom gave me a sweater she had clearly saved up for, her face lighting up as I unwrapped it. I wanted to cry, not out of happiness, but out of shame. I could have given her the world, yet I sat there pretending that a sweater was enough. That night, as everyone slept, I slipped an envelope of cash into the church donation box down the street. It was my way of releasing the pressure, of using the money without hurting anyone directly. But the act also highlighted how much of my life was lived in shadows. The secret began to change me in ways I didn't expect. I became quieter, more guarded. Friends joked that I was maturing, but the truth was uglier. I was becoming paranoid. Every question felt loaded, every casual conversation like a potential trap. When a friend asked if I wanted to join a weekend trip, I panicked, wondering if saying yes would seem suspicious, too expensive for someone like me. I declined, retreating deeper into my cocoon of lies. And with every no I gave, I felt myself drifting further from the people I loved. There were also nights when I let myself dream recklessly. I'd sit in front of my laptop, browsing houses and neighborhoods I never thought I'd see, imagining myself walking through those wide hallways, filling them with laughter and light. Sometimes I even drove past those homes, parked on the street, and stared at them until the windows blurred with tears. They were so close, yet so impossibly far, because to step into that life meant stepping out of my family's trust. And that was a price I wasn't ready to pay. But no secret survives forever. It started small, a casual remark from my best friend. "You've been different lately," she said, tilting her head as if trying to read me. I laughed it off, blamed it on stress, but her words stuck in my mind. Later, my brother asked me twice if I needed help with money, his tone oddly probing. The questions didn't stop. I could feel their curiosity growing, like they sensed a shift they couldn't explain. And I knew it was only a matter of time before someone pushed harder. One evening, after a particularly tense family dinner, my mother pulled me aside. She looked me straight in the eye and asked, "Emily, is there something you're not telling us?" Her voice wasn't accusing. It was gentle, worried, but it cut through me like a blade. I stood there, frozen, torn between two lives, the one I had, full of lies and silence, and the one I could have, if only I dared to tell the truth. That moment was the beginning of a storm I could no longer outrun. The question my mother asked that night echoed in my mind for weeks. Is there something you're not telling us? It wasn't the words themselves that terrified me, but the tone, soft, worried, almost maternal in the way she always had been. Yet behind her concern, I felt a shadow of suspicion. She knew something was off. I tried to brush it away, to convince myself she was only picking up on stress, but deep down, I knew the cracks in my silence were widening. Once someone starts sensing a secret, it becomes harder and harder to keep it hidden. At work, the weight of my double life grew unbearable. I was still showing up at the cafe, brewing coffee, smiling at customers, while millions of dollars sat untouched in my account. My boss praised me for working extra hours, and I nodded, knowing I didn't need the paycheck at all. A coworker invited me to join them on a trip to Florida, and I lied, saying I couldn't afford it. The lie tasted bitter. I realized then how much of my life had become rehearsed lines in a play I hadn't chosen to act in. I wasn't just hiding the truth. I was becoming someone else entirely. The paranoia seeped into every part of me. Whenever my phone buzzed with a bank notification, I panicked, afraid someone might glance at my screen and see numbers that didn't belong to a struggling barista. I cleared my browsing history constantly, terrified someone might notice I'd been looking at luxury homes or investment opportunities. Even my sleep betrayed me. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, certain I had confessed in a dream, and the world outside already knew. Secrets have a way of bleeding into everything, even when you try to cage them. The slip came during an ordinary conversation with my brother. He was complaining about how expensive car repairs were, and without thinking, I said, "Well, sometimes it's easier to just buy a new one." The words came out casually, too casually, but as soon as I heard them, my stomach dropped. His eyes flicked to mine, puzzled, like he had just caught a strange note in a familiar song. I laughed quickly, tried to brush it off as a joke, but the silence that followed felt dangerous. He didn't press me then, but I saw the question forming behind his eyes. That night, I replayed the moment 100 times. One careless sentence and everything could unravel. I realized how fragile my secret really was. One slip of the tongue, one moment of comfort, and the wall I had built could collapse in an instant. From that point on, I became even more careful. I rehearsed responses in my head before family dinners, practiced pretending I was broke, even forced myself to frown at bills just to keep the act alive. It was exhausting, and worse, it was isolating. Isolation became my new normal. Friends noticed that I was pulling away, always making excuses not to go out, not to travel, not to spend. They thought I was depressed, and maybe I was, but not in the way they imagined. I was depressed from living in a cage of my own making. I wanted to scream the truth, to share the joy and the fear, but the risk felt too great, so I stayed quiet, slowly fading into the background of my own relationships, until even laughter felt like another mask I had to wear. But secrets don't just isolate you, they twist you. I began resenting the very people I loved, not because of anything they did, but because I was constantly lying to them. Every time my mother asked if I needed groceries, I lied. Every time my best friend asked if I wanted to split a bill, I lied. Every time my brother offered me a ride to save gas, I lied. The more I lied, the more I felt like a stranger in my own skin. And the cruelest part? I had done this to myself. The paranoia sharpened into something darker after I noticed my brother watching me differently. He didn't say anything, but his glances lingered, as if he was waiting for me to slip again. Once he caught me filling up my old car with gas and muttered, "You know, one of these days you're going to surprise us." I laughed, forced a smile, but his tone wasn't casual. It was probing. He was fishing, and I knew I was the bait. That realization set my nerves on fire. I started avoiding him, skipping family gatherings, claiming I was too tired from work, but avoiding him only fueled suspicion. My mother called more often, her voice carrying that same question. "Emily, are you okay?" The walls were closing in. I wasn't just hiding my wealth anymore. I was hiding from the people I loved most. And in the quiet moments, staring at my bank account or clutching the shoebox where I had once hidden the winning ticket, I wondered if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. It all built to one moment I'll never forget. At a family dinner, my brother suddenly asked, "Emily, what would you do if you had $1,000,000? The question was casual, thrown in like a joke, but I froze. My fork hovered in midair, my mouth dry. I forced a laugh, said something generic about paying off debts, but I could feel their eyes on me, measuring, questioning. In that instant, I knew the secret I thought I had buried was starting to claw its way to the surface, and I had no idea how much longer I could keep it buried. The question my brother asked at dinner, "What would you do if you had $1,000,000?" didn't leave me. It replayed in my head like a haunting melody, each repetition sharper, heavier. I told myself it was a joke, just family teasing, but the way he looked at me while he asked, it wasn't casual. His eyes were searching, probing, almost daring me to flinch. And I had that hesitation, that half-second pause before I forced out an answer, was enough. I knew he had noticed, and once suspicion plants itself, it grows. I tried harder than ever to mask the truth, to bury it beneath layers of normalcy. I went out of my way to complain about bills, to grumble about my car, to sigh over grocery prices, mimicking the same struggles everyone else voiced. But acting broke when you're not is harder than it sounds. There were slips, tiny ones, but they mattered. Like the time I casually mentioned a new restaurant in town before it was officially open, forgetting I'd only known about it because I'd driven past after secretly visiting a luxury car dealership nearby. Or when I gave my best friend an oddly generous birthday gift compared to what I'd given in years past. Each moment was a thread unraveling from the fabric of my lies. My best friend, Sarah, was the first to corner me. One afternoon, she stopped me mid-conversation, eyes narrowing. "Emily," she said softly, "what's going on with you? You're different." I laughed nervously, tried to blame work stress, but she didn't buy it. "You're hiding something," she continued, her tone firm but caring. "You can tell me." My heart pounded so loudly I thought she could hear it. For a split second, I wanted to tell her everything, to unload the unbearable weight, but fear snapped its jaws around me, and instead I smiled weakly and changed the subject. That night, guilt consumed me. Sarah had been my anchor for years, the one person I trusted with my darkest thoughts, yet I couldn't share this with her. I lay awake imagining how she would react if I told her. Would she be happy for me, or would money build a wall between us? Would she tell others? Would our friendship survive? The questions spiraled endlessly, and with each one my silence felt heavier. The irony was cruel. I had won freedom, yet I was shackled tighter than ever. The paranoia deepened with every family gathering. My brother asked more pointed questions. Little hypotheticals slipped into casual talk. My mom, too, seemed watchful, like she sensed the storm but didn't know its shape. Once, when I came over wearing a new coat I'd bought on impulse, my mother raised an eyebrow. "That's nice, honey," she said slowly. "Did you finally get a raise?" The question stung. I muttered something about saving up, but the way she held my gaze told me she wasn't convinced. My family had always known me too well. Lying to strangers was easy. Lying to them was like trying to outrun my own reflection. I began to withdraw even more, skipping gatherings and making excuses, but avoidance only sharpened their suspicions. When you pull away from people who love you, they don't stop caring. They start digging. Calls became more frequent, questions more direct. My brother once joked, "You're not secretly rich or something, are you?" He laughed, but I heard the edge in his voice. It was a joke built on suspicion, and I couldn't laugh back. I forced a smile, changed the topic, but inside I was unraveling. One evening, Sarah showed up at my apartment unannounced. She looked around, noticing the subtle changes, nicer furniture, new appliances, little upgrades I had convinced myself myself weren't noticeable. Emily, she said, arms crossed, tell me the truth. Are you hiding something from us? My throat tightened. The urge to confess was overwhelming, but I swallowed it down, insisting she was imagining things. She left that night unconvinced, her silence louder than any accusation. And as the door shut behind her, I realized I had just planted doubt in the one person I had always relied on. The double life began to eat away at my sanity. I couldn't relax, couldn't breathe without calculating every word, every gesture. I caught myself rehearsing conversations in the mirror, practicing what a broke Emily would say versus what a rich Emily might accidentally reveal. I was living a script, and the performance was failing. The cracks weren't just in my story anymore. They were in me. My laughter sounded hollow, my smiles forced. The people closest to me could feel the difference, even if they didn't yet know the reason. And then came the mistake that nearly tore everything open. My brother borrowed my laptop one afternoon to check something online. I had forgotten to clear my history. When he handed it back, his face was unreadable. You've been looking at real estate? He asked, voice too calm. My stomach flipped. I scrambled for an excuse, something about daydreaming or window shopping, but his eyes lingered on me with quiet suspicion. He didn't press further, but the silence between us was thick with unspoken truths. I knew then that my secret was no longer mine alone. The walls were closing in. I could feel it every time my phone rang, every time someone looked at me too long, every time a question lingered a beat too long in conversation. My family and friends didn't know the truth yet, but they were circling it, circling me, and I was running out of lies to keep them away. I had thought I could control this secret, that I could protect everyone by staying silent, but now it felt like the silence itself was the weapon that might destroy us all. The morning it snapped, the sky was the color of unmade decisions, gray, heavy, waiting. I stood in my kitchen clutching a mug I didn't drink from, watching steam disappear like promises. My phone vibrated with 3 messages. My mom asking if I'd come by for dinner, my brother sending a link to a budget car he thought I should consider, and Sarah, we need to talk. Those 4 words pulsed like a siren. I had run for months, rehearsed lies until they tasted like toothpaste. But that morning, my mouth felt empty. I couldn't swallow one more. I drove to my mother's house with the radio off, listening to the sound of my tires thrum against the road, counting beats like a metronome for courage. I told myself I'd act normal, bring flowers, laugh, deflect, but my hands were slick against the steering wheel, and when I checked the mirror, my eyes looked like windows left open in a storm. I parked, sat breathing in the driveway, and imagined turning the key, reversing, fleeing. Instead, I opened the door. The hinge creaked like it knew what was coming. Inside, the house smelled like garlic and rosemary, a comfort so familiar it almost convinced me to lie again. My mother wiped her hands on a dish towel and smiled in that way that mothers do, her eyes scanning for answers before her mouth asks questions. You look tired, honey, she said softly. She wasn't wrong. I felt like I'd hauled a mountain on my back for months. My brother arrived a few minutes later, a 6-pack in one hand, suspicion in the other. Sarah texted again. I'm outside. I swallowed hard. This wasn't dinner. It was gravity. We gathered around the table like we always did. Salad in a chipped bowl, bread that cracked just right, clinking glasses. Except the conversation kept skirting around me, circling like birds that had spotted something shiny in the grass. My brother asked about work, too casually. My mother wanted to know how my rent was. Sarah leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes kind and unflinching. Emily, she said, we love you, but something's wrong. The room went quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hear the refrigerator hum and your heart argue with itself. I tried the old routines. I shrugged. I laughed lightly. I said I'd been stressed, that work hours had been weird, that I'd been saving. My brother's jaw tightened. Saving? For what? He wasn't asking to attack me. He was asking because he'd been worried for months, and worry gets sharp when it's ignored. My mother reached across the table, her touch warm and steady. If you're in trouble, she said, we will help. The irony tasted metallic. The lie rose to my lips like reflex. Then something inside me, tired, stubborn, finally brave, refused. I won the lottery, I said. The words fell like a glass bowl from a counter. First the gasp, then the shatter. No one spoke. My brother blinked as if I had suddenly started speaking a language he didn't know. My mother's hand froze halfway to mine. Sarah's eyes filled, not with envy, but with a grief I didn't expect. How long? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. Months, I said. I didn't tell anyone. The silence stretched. I heard a car door outside, a dog bark down the block, the universe refusing to pause just because mine had. It didn't explode. It fractured. My brother stood first, pacing, one hand behind his neck. You asked me for help with your car, he said, not angry, wounded. You let mom worry about groceries. My mother's eyes glistened, but her voice stayed soft, almost gentle. Were you afraid of us? The truth stung. I was afraid of losing you, I said. I've seen what money does. I thought if I could just protect this, protect us, I'd keep everything the same. Sarah wiped a tear with her sleeve. But you didn't keep us, she said. You kept the secret. I wanted to defend myself, to explain the sleepless nights, the panic, the constant rehearsals. But explanations are poor substitutes for presence. I'm sorry, I said. said, and the apology felt too small for the room it needed to fill. I was wrong. I confused silence with safety. I hurt you because I didn't trust the love we already had. My mother finally breathed out, a long, shaking exhale that sounded like surrender and forgiveness wrestling for space. Money doesn't break families, she said softly. Secrets do. She squeezed my hand. Next time, let us choose you over fear. We moved to the living room, conversation stumbling but alive. The questions came like rain, gentle, then steady, then cleansing. How much? Enough. What now? I didn't know. Would I quit my job? Maybe. Would I help with the mortgage? Yes. Would I set boundaries? I had to. We talked about lawyers, taxes, trust funds, but also about dinners and birthdays and summer barbecues and what it means to be generous without turning love into transactions. My brother finally laughed, a real laugh, shaking his head. You're ridiculous, he said, and pulled me into a hug that forgave more than my words could. When Sarah and I stepped onto the porch, the evening had softened into gold. She leaned against the railing, studying me like the girl she'd met years ago was resurfacing. I'm angry, she admitted. Not about the money, about the distance. I deserved that. I kept imagining the worst, I said. That you'd change, that I would. She nodded. We will change, she said. But maybe we can do it together. The porch light flickered on. We stood in that quiet where friendship either breaks or becomes something truer. Don't shut me out again, she said. I won't, I promised and meant it. Driving home, I rolled down the window and let the night air undo the knot under my ribs. I expected relief to arrive like fireworks. Instead, it came like rain on a tin roof, steady, honest, unpretentious. I had told the truth, and the world hadn't ended. It had wobbled, then found a new center. I thought of all the ways money had made me smaller when it could have made me more generous. Of all the times I hid when I could have reached out. Shame rose, then receded, replaced by something quieter. Responsibility carried with open hands. Back in my kitchen, the mug still waited, cold now, harmless. I opened my laptop. For the first time, I didn't clear my history. I drafted 3 emails. One to a financial advisor about creating a family trust, one to my boss about taking a leave, and one to an animal shelter about funding a new wing. Before sending, I texted my mom. Breakfast tomorrow? My treat. She replied with a heart and a pancake emoji that made me laugh. I wasn't fixed. We weren't finished, but the cage door was open, and I knew which way the light was.